Picture this. In Washington state, a man once claimed he had a pit on his land so deep that no rope or weight could reach the bottom. Not just a deep well, not just an abandoned mine shaft, but something far stranger. He said it swallowed everything, never echoed, and seemed to break the rules of reality. This was the legend of Mel's Hole, and for decades people have been obsessed with finding it. The tale begins in 1997, when a man calling himself Mel Waters phoned into a late-night radio show famous for wild theories and strange encounters. His voice was steady, his story specific. West of the town of Ellensburg, he owned land with a mysterious chasm. Neighbors had tossed garbage into it for years, but no one had ever seen or heard anything hit bottom. Curious, Mel lowered a fishing line weighted with a chunk of metal. He claimed he let out more than 15 miles of line, and still nothing. The pit, he insisted, had no end. That alone was enough to stir listeners' imaginations, but Mel wasn't done. Over the years, his stories grew stranger. He said that animals refused to go near the hole. A dead dog tossed in by a neighbor was later spotted alive in the woods, wearing the same collar. He described experiments where ice lowered into the pit came back warm but solid, with bizarre flammable properties. He swore radios near the site played voices and old songs from unknown sources. The hole, he said, seemed to twist nature itself. And then came the government angle. Mel reported that officials seized his property, barred him from returning, and even paid him off. He claimed to have fled to Australia only to be kidnapped on his return to the US. His last known call in 2002 described waking up with missing teeth, unexplained injuries, and no memory of lost weeks. He hinted at another hole in Nevada with the same impossible traits. After that, Mel vanished from the airwaves. So what are we to make of this? On one side, believers insist the mystery hole is real, hidden by powerful forces. On the other, skeptics point out that no record exists of a man named Mel Waters owning land in the area. No coordinates were ever given, and expeditions to find the pit turned up empty. Geologists flatly dismiss the entire concept. The Earth's crust isn't infinitely penetrable. Dig too deep, and the rock collapses from immense heat and pressure. At best, Mel may have stumbled upon an old mine shaft. At worst, he fabricated the whole thing for attention. But the story stuck. Maybe because humans are drawn to the idea of hidden depths, literally and metaphorically. A hole that defies science is a perfect playground for the imagination. Think about it. What's at the bottom of an endless pit? A portal? Another world? The unknown is irresistible. Interestingly, there is a real-world parallel. The Kola Superdeep Borehole in Russia. In the 1970s, Soviet scientists drilled over 12 kilometers down, the deepest man-made hole in history. What they discovered wasn't magic, but it was surprising. Rock behaving like plastic from the heat, traces of water locked deep in stone, and conditions far more extreme than expected. At those depths, instruments failed, and drilling had to stop. Even without supernatural claims, reality gave us mysteries enough. So why does Mel's Hole endure as a legend? Because it captures something ancient in us. We've always told stories about forbidden places, bottomless lakes, haunted caves, gates to the underworld. Mel's tale simply updated the myth for modern radio and conspiracy culture. A hole that can resurrect dogs and transform ice into fire is the kind of story you can't help but repeat, even if you don't believe it. In the end, the evidence points towards fiction. A man with no traceable history spins a story too fantastical to be true, and science confirms it couldn't exist as described. Yet, the legend refuses to die. That's the power of a good mystery. It doesn't matter if it's real. It matters that people want it to be real. Somewhere out there, hikers still wander the hills near Ellensburg, scanning the ground for an impossible abyss. And here's the twist. Maybe the hole was never the point. Maybe it was about seeing how far a story could travel, how much people crave the possibility of something that bends the rules. Because if a bottomless pit existed, what else could be true? A legend like this dares us to wonder. So no, Mel's Hole almost certainly doesn't exist. But the curiosity it sparked, that's very real. And sometimes the mysteries we invent say more about us than the ones we solve.
You lie down facing the scorching sun in the middle of the desert when suddenly you smell something extremely foul. You try to crawl to the source to see if maybe someone there can help you, but all you see is a large hole in the middle of nowhere. You crawl there and stick your head down the hole. You hear something really faint down there, but it's too dark to see anything. Still, the foul smell tickles your nostrils. You turn away in disgust and stand up to get a better view of it. The hole is roughly 100 feet in diameter, with nothing around it. You've been wandering around the desert for days and just ran out of food and water, but far away, you see what looks like a small hut. You walk there for another couple of hours until you reach the outskirts of a village. A local man riding a camel tells you that you're in the Al-Mara province in Yemen's eastern region, which is quite close to Oman. He immediately takes you to his mud hut, feeds you, and gives you some water. Feeling refreshed and full, you ask the local about the hole in the desert floor. His eyes sink in and his face grows pale. He grabs you by your sleeve in silence, throws you out of his hut, and slams the door shut. You try to knock on his door once more, but he ignores you. Out ahead is the village market, where you could surely get some answers from people. You head over there, and everyone starts staring at you as if you're some kind of threat. They sense something's off about you. You put on your hood and make your way to a merchant. While you purchase some food, you ask the seller about the hole, but he refuses to sell you anything. He even pushes you off to the pathway. You make your way to another vendor and ask about the hole. At first, he's reluctant to tell you anything, but after you buy a few items from his shop, he finally concedes. He takes you to a small inn and seats you down. He tells you to keep your voice low when talking about it. He then orders a beverage for you and begins explaining everything he knows about the hole. Legends have it that the well of Barhout, which is in Hadramaut, is a cursed place, a prison for spirits. He claims that any object that goes near it eventually disappears. The server comes back with 2 refreshing drinks, and the man quickly stops talking. As soon as the server leaves, he resumes telling you about the well. The reason why people were avoiding you when you mentioned the well was because it's believed that it brought bad luck to anyone who was near it. They were even able to feel it through you. The man tells you that he doesn't believe in such superstitions, but you want to find out more. At night, you head back to the well to find out if what he said was true. You sit down next to it and concentrate all your senses. It's quiet, nothing but the desert wind brushing against the sand. You hear something that sounds like a whisper coming from the hole, as if calling you to go inside. You get up from your meditation and walk towards the hole. The sound gets louder, but you still can't make anything of it. You stick your head down the hole to listen while holding your breath, but it just sounds like gibberish. The next day, you get some rope and pikes and wait till nightfall to prepare for the next step, descending down the hole. Nighttime comes again, and you set up the ropes and tie them around a tree. You climb down while holding the rope with one hand and a torch with the other, and scale down. You try to breathe through your mouth, but you start to feel like you need to catch deeper breaths the lower you go. The hole is believed to be around 850 feet deep, but you were only able to go down around 20. You didn't expect it to be that deep. You start climbing back up, but you decide to drop the torch into the hole to see how far it goes. You see the flame getting smaller and smaller as it disappears into the darkness. Maybe the man was right, just village folklore about something they can't explain. Scientists claim that the hole is millions of years old and has practically no ventilation. Even though it's been around for such a long time, it remains as mysterious today as it's always been. You're walking in Siberia, looking out for some reindeer, when suddenly you hear a loud explosion from the distance. All of your reindeer scatter around, and you're too much in a frenzy to collect them. You run to the source of the blast and find a huge crater in an area you just passed through. In August 2020, a massive hole was discovered in Siberia, Russia, being around 100 feet deep and around 65 feet wide. The local residents and researchers were stunned to find it there. This is the 9th hole documented in the region since 2013. You call the local authorities, and a huge team of scientists arrive with weird-looking scientific equipment. They claim this crater is the biggest one they've seen so far. Most of these craters were found by accident when people went on non-scientific outings by helicopter or by hunters and herders. Scientists aren't able to wrap their heads around it, but they knew exactly where to start. Permafrost, the thing that covers 2/3 of the whole country's territory. Scientists believe that by studying the permafrost, which contains certain chemicals, we can find out why these craters are popping out. Samples of the craters contain a lot of chemicals, but most notably, methane. Scientists took plenty of samples of the frozen soil from the ground and the ice. They had to descend down the crater to collect most of them. And within 2 years, these craters end up turning into lakes. According to their studies, the gases, which are mainly made up of methane, accumulate in the upper layers of the permafrost, and they can come both from the deep layers of the earth and those close to the surface. These gases end up getting trapped in the frost as they accumulate, creating enough pressure to burst through the frozen ground. They claim that these giant holes are a result of the growing temperatures, but that's just one theory. They're still not really sure how they could have formed. But because most of these craters form in remote areas of the Arctic and take years to shape, no one really talks about them. You're fast asleep in the city of Fukuoka, Japan. At around 5 a.m., you hear a loud explosion and feel the ground shake. Japan is prone to earthquakes and tsunamis, so you're prepared for the worst. But the ground isn't rumbling and the building isn't shaking anymore. You check the power, and nothing. The whole apartment and neighborhood is completely dark. You look far out from the balcony and see a huge hole in the middle of a 5-lane road. You leave the building and join the crowd gathering outside. The hole is about 65 feet deep, and it swallowed everything around it. The traffic lights, sidewalks, and a bus stop are all gone. Even parts of buildings are destroyed, leaving the support beams still standing. The whole subway system is totally dysfunctional, and about 800 households are experiencing blackouts. Even the airport and subway had a bit of it. The local authorities evacuate the entire area in case more sinkholes or gas explosions occur. A few days later, it's all fixed. It only took the Japanese engineers and contractors 48 hours to fill it up, and a week to reopen the road to the public. The explosion might have been caused by some construction on a subway line, but the sinkhole is sinking again. People noticed that the road seemed to decline by about 3 inches in heavy traffic. But with quick maintenance, Japan can fix anything in the fastest way possible.
Woodingdean Water Well. It may have the title of the deepest hand-dug well in the world, but at first sight, it's just a small covered well you wouldn't even assume that it's there. It's located somewhere close to Brighton and Hove, England. Despite its inconspicuous appearance, it's as deep as the Empire State Building is tall, 1,280 feet straight down into the dark, wet ground. Hey, toss in a penny and make a wish. Wait, it's not a wishing well. Never mind. In the middle of the 19th century, one powerful corporation wanted to build a new workhouse in the area that today is known as Elm Grove. They decided to add it to an industrial school for juveniles as well. It was established for those whose parents were living in the local workhouse, and the aim was to teach the youth the habits of industry. The corporation wanted to provide water for their new institution, so they dug a new well. It was too expensive to bring piped water in from the nearby waterworks. They first wanted to make a 6 feet wide brick-lined well down to about 400 feet. That's where they expected to find the subterranean water table. They were digging for 2 years, and the shaft went past those depths, but they still didn't find any water. They thought they somehow missed the water source, so they started digging horizontally in 4 different directions. Even after many hours of work and multiple tunnels in different directions, still nothing. For the next 2 years, they didn't stop digging. Workers would descend rickety ladders hundreds of feet below the surface, illuminated just by the light of candles. They only used hand tools to load their buckets with soil and pass them up to the surface. Then they would use bricks other workers would send down from above to line the narrow interior. The heat down there was intense. They were able to breathe thanks to steam engines that would pump air through pipes down below. After 4 years of digging, they got to a depth of 1,285 feet. 850 feet of that was below sea level. At that point, the water finally broke through the surface. But as it was coming up, the workers were trying to escape it. It took them 45 minutes to scramble up such a deep shaft. It was expensive, and the company put enormous effort into this well, and they used it for just 4 years. They abandoned the well in favor of some other, more practical one. A 2-foot flint and brick wall is surrounding Woodingdean water well now. There's also a metal lid covering its top so people wouldn't fall in. It would certainly feel like a journey to the center of the earth, don't you think? It took a research team 20 years to drill down the Kola Superdeep borehole. This one is over 40,000 feet deep, and despite getting so deep, they never actually reached the mantle. The drill bit was just around 1/3 of the total way through the crust to the mantle. The heat was insane, which made their work extra hard. Also, their drill got stuck in a rock, so the whole project was finally abandoned in 1989. The Kola Peninsula is located deep in the Arctic Circle. Forests, lakes, snow, and mysterious mists kind of turn this area into a scene from a fairy tale. But in the middle of one crumbling building there, you can see a heavy, rusty metal cap. It's embedded in the concrete floor, as well as secured by a thick, rusty ring of metal bolts. And that's the deepest artificial point on our planet. Bingham Canyon Mine, near Salt Lake City, Utah, is a cool one too. More people know it as the Kennecott Copper Mine. This mine spans 3 square miles and produces more copper than all other mines have in our world's history. It was opened at the beginning of the 20th century. It's owned by a large multinational corporation at the moment. Back in 2010, they even declared they'd like to dig the mine further and deepen it for another 300 feet. Bingham Canyon Mine has so many roads. If you could stretch them out into one large road, it would go from Salt Lake City all the way to Denver. There was a massive landslide in April 2013 in this area, so strong it even caused its own earthquakes. This is the world's deepest open-pit mine, so deep astronauts can see it from orbit. Humans first started digging towards the planet's mantle in the 1960s. That's when American scientists began with something they named Project Mohole. The project got its name after a man who found the boundary between the Earth's mantle and crust. The team didn't drill on land, but on a boat in the ocean. The crust is actually thinner on the ocean floor, although the difficult part is that the crust is the thinnest in areas where the ocean is deepest. Go figure. The researchers were drilling next to the island of Guadalupe, which is off the west coast of Mexico. There's a pit of impressive size and an amazing background story. One man in a drought-ridden part of India has really done the impossible. He dug a well in only 40 days. His wife wasn't allowed to draw water from a well that was in the village because of the caste they belonged to. The man decided to dig a well by himself and give a source of water both to his family and the community. Nobody believed it was possible, but he took his shovel and kept digging day after day before going to work every morning, and later in the evening after he would finish the work. 40 days later, he finally got to the water and proved that some people can sometimes truly stretch their mental and physical limits to achieve what's impossible. Now imagine how difficult it is to dig a mine by hand. And we're talking about a really big hole mine. They would mine diamonds without any machinery. You can find such a case in South Africa in the province of Kimberley. A geological pipe there was formed after a breakthrough of gases in the crust of our planet. The pipe was named Kimberley after the location, just like others in that area. It's in the shape of a pretty large carrot. You can see its upper conical part that narrows as it goes deeper, turning into a vein in the end. 1870 was the time when the diamond fever began in the city of Kimberley. Nearly 50,000 people were mining and extracting more than 20 million tons of soil using only their picks and shovels. The development area was close to 2 million square feet. They dug up to 787 feet from 1871 to 1914 and extracted enormous amounts of diamonds, worth more than $1 billion. This mine has become an artificial lake. Today, it's the most picturesque landmark in this province. Darvaza crater is one of the world's most unique spots you can find. It's a burning hole people actually made more than 40 years ago. This gaping crater opened up in the desert of Turkmenistan. It was most likely a consequence of a drilling mishap. Geologists then set it on fire on purpose. They were afraid all those noxious gases would have a negative impact on the environment, so they wanted to burn them off. They also wanted to prevent the spread of methane gas after the ground below the drilling rig collapsed into a cavern. So now we have a 98-foot deep hole. They thought the crater would burn for only a week. Oops, but they were wrong. Thing is, the crater's been burning for over 40 years now. Actually, it's not that bad. The hole on fire eventually turned into a quite popular spot that attracts many tourists. This site looks like the portal to the Earth's core. Hey, maybe you have some marshmallows we can roast?
There's not much to do in Antarctica except scientific work. You could check out the wildlife, like some cute penguins and seals, and you'd get to see the occasional whale swimming around. Antarctica is one of the biggest lands out there that's only inhabited by scientists and researchers from all over the world. These scientists dug a hole through some pretty thick ice to study the ancient air and how the atmosphere cleans itself. They used a special drill and dug a clean cylindrical hole 450 feet below the surface. Some of this ice can be up to 800,000 years old and is a good indicator of what the climate was like in the past. It's like checking out tree rings to determine how old a certain tree is, except it's more complicated than that. After the effortless digging, they decided to drop some ice to the bottom of the hole to see what would happen next. They heard some really unusual sounds. It felt like being on a spaceship traveling through a bunch of obstacles with many rocks smashing into each other. The pitches changed over the quick descent of the block of ice, ranging from high pitch and ending with a low heartbeat-like sound. The scientists were puzzled when they first heard this and dropped some more ice, only to find out that the same type of sounds were being produced, just in different variations. They couldn't tell what was down there and, more importantly, why these kinds of sounds were produced. Antarctica boasts quite a few volcanoes, many of which are under super thick sheets of ice. Scientists discovered 91 volcanoes and claimed there could be more, potentially making it the most extensive volcanic region in the world. While they were doing regular scientific research, they came across many unmistakable large cone-shaped figures underground. Some were as deep as 2 miles in the ice. Some of the peaks were over 3,000 feet tall and dozens of miles across. But on the surface, it's as plain as a sheet of paper. They may have dropped that block of ice inside an actual volcano that they were standing on, but it's unlikely. Even though the underground volcano presence was discovered by accident, there's a small chance they were actually standing on one where they had their workstation set up. It's more likely that they worked in an area where studying ancient climates is easier and less dangerous than other places. They collect ice samples and study them in a lab. It's like discovering a prehistoric insect embedded in amber millions of years ago when dinosaurs used to roam the land. But instead of little bugs, scientists study ancient dust, air bubbles, sea salts, volcanic ash, and anything else that may have come from the environment. They can practically tell how the climate was during that time. These ice samples might show that Antarctica's western ice sheet melted when the Earth's climate warmed up. If it did, then it's likely to happen again. That would mean sea levels rising, affecting coastal cities and small remote islands. But scientists aren't sure it's true, despite some evidence to back it up. The process of studying ice samples can take a week or even a year, depending on what they find. They crush or melt the sample bit by bit. And like those tree rings, the deeper the layer, the further we go back in time. In order to study ancient bubbles trapped in ice, researchers have to crush the samples under a vacuum hood to keep the air out while extracting the air and putting it in vials. There are various instruments and devices to study the ice samples, but because it's so sensitive to damage, each measurement must be in a clean room setting so that nothing gets compromised. The scientists have to wear proper bodysuits and many layers of gloves and constantly get ventilated. Even something as tiny and insignificant as a fingerprint can ruin a sample. They look for certain patterns to see changes in the atmosphere's composition and temperature. But dropping a few blocks of ice down a hole wouldn't be so bad. The reason why it made such a peculiar sound is the same reason why a moving car sounds different when it's honking than when it's stationary. The scientific word for it is the Doppler effect. It's an obvious change in the frequency of a wave with respect to an observer who is moving relative to the wave source. The effect doesn't mean the frequency of the sound changes, it just shifts. And this can be said about other types of waves, like water and light. But sound waves are the most popular ones when it comes to the Doppler effect. So, when the scientists dropped the ice block down the bottom of the hole, the sound waves traveled back up and bounced around the narrow tube where they drilled. That's why they got the pew pew sound. Let's not forget that this ice block traveled 450 feet beneath us. Oil ships dig holes in the oceanic crust that go thousands of feet beneath the Earth. The Kola Superdeep Borehole in Russia is the deepest hole ever made by humans. It goes more than 40,000 feet below the surface and took almost 20 years to reach 7.5 miles. Below it is only half the distance to the mantle. In terms of the whole Earth, this very deep hole is literally scratching the surface. This wasn't a hole to dig for oil, and wasn't in the ocean either. The drilling was stopped in 1992 when the engineers found out that the temperatures were 100 degrees Fahrenheit higher than they predicted. And then it was abandoned, and it's just been a barren hole now. But that's the closest we've dug to the center of the planet. The scary thing is that some of the workers on the site could hear voices coming from within. All the way in Yemen, an ancient hole exists in Barhout, in the east of the country in the middle of the desert. It's actually closer to Oman than to the capital Sana'a. This hole has puzzled experts and locals. Unlike the holes in Russia and Antarctica, this wasn't man-made. Or was it? It's been around for many years, and the locals try to steer away from it. They don't even like talking about it, since they claim it brings bad luck to those around it, or to whoever utters its name. They claim it was created as a prison for spirits, but many rule that out. The hole is 98 feet wide and somewhere between 330 to 650 feet deep. You can also hear strange sounds coming from the inside. But according to some scientists, the well has little to no ventilation and barely has any oxygen down there. So it's unlikely that anyone or anything lives down there. The Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench caught some low-pitched grumble sounds in March of 2016. Some of these grumbles were followed by screeches. They caught these sounds in a span of weeks, using a titanium-encased microphone so that the immense pressure of the lowest point on Earth wouldn't crush it. They had to lower it slowly as well, since it's 1,000 times the atmospheric pressure at sea level. For 23 whole days, the microphone recorded typical sounds of whales passing by and boats sailing across from above, and even rumbles of nearby earthquakes, but they still couldn't determine what caused those initial sounds. The researchers couldn't understand if the noise from the bottom of the Mariana Trench was caused by humans or was natural. They also wanted to know if these sounds affected marine life, like dolphins and whales that rely on echolocation. They still can't figure it out. But scientists estimate that the ocean is about 10 times noisier than it was 50 years ago. With technological developments in shipping, submarines, and underwater construction, the ocean will only get louder with time. Northern lights come with sounds, which nobody talks about. They're usually audible when the auroras are at their most powerful presence. Scientists were always puzzled as to what caused the faint popping and crackling, even though they were very far above us. They used some special microphones and found out that the sounds came just 230 feet above us, which is pretty low. They're caused by electrical charges gaining power in a specific region of the auroras. The electrical charges are disturbed by magnetic storms that fire up the northern lights. As a result, some tiny sparks are released into the atmosphere, causing the faint crackling and popping noise.